So you want to start a homestead? Well, then this video's for you. Welcome to Honey Acres Homestead. I'm Melissa, and I titled this video, How Not to Start a Homestead. And all I mean by that is I would like to share some mistakes that we've made, some lessons that we've learned, and just share some pointers and tips for those of you who might be considering starting a homestead yourself. We have definitely learned a lot since we started our first homestead back in 2014, and I wanted to hopefully be helpful to those of you who are considering going that way and starting that journey with your own life. This video is not for those of you who grew up on a farm, who know what you're doing, who maybe you're already comfortable raising animals and all that. This is not for you. This is for the newbies, the people who are like us, who are trying to do this for the first time in their life. And also, this is just our experience, so take it with a grain of salt, but I want it to be helpful, and hopefully it will be helpful to you if this is something you're considering doing. So, the first thing you should not do when you start a homestead is do not grow too quickly. Grow slowly, and that especially means with animals. It is very, very easy to get excited when you get to your property and you can have the freedom to fill it with animals, and animals are so easy to buy, and they're so cute, and they're so fun, but grow slowly. We started our first homestead with just getting some chickens, and it's really funny to look back at that experience now and how I didn't even know how to hold the chicken, but it's the perfect first farm animal, chickens. And once we got a hang of chickens, then we moved on to having some dairy goats, just a couple, and then we moved on to getting some honeybees, and we really grew slowly with our first homestead, and it worked out fantastic. We also had toddlers at the time, so that itself was a limiting factor to our growth. But it worked out really well, and I feel like we really were able to learn at a comfortable pace and could really handle, well, maybe. We learned a lot, and there was a lot of trial and error, but it was at a good pace, and we did not feel like we were just completely drowning. Now, fast forward, we have now started homesteads on 3 different properties, and the second property we did all right. I don't think we bought too much all at once, and it went well, but when we got here at this property here, we wanted to just get rocking and rolling as fast as possible. We bought all the animals. We started just going. Meanwhile, we were doing projects. We got overwhelmed. It just got to be too much. So grow slowly, especially in the beginning when you're learning. Learn one animal first. When you got that kind of under control, then you can expand. But you don't want to be overwhelmed and discouraged. And this is a sure way to make that happen, is to overload yourself with animal chores and feed bills and poopy messes and where are they going to live and all this stuff, because there's a lot to learn with animals. So do not grow too quickly. The second how not to start a homestead tip is when you maybe inevitably don't follow number 1 and get too many animals, do not think you have to keep them all. Do not feel like you are a failure if you feel the need to downsize. We don't really know what our threshold is as far as how much time we have, about just what we can handle until we reach that point sometimes. And if you feel like you've gotten to the point where you are just completely dreading taking care of this animal, if they're breaking the bank and they're costing a lot, if it's not exactly going how you wanted it to go, do not feel ashamed to just sell that animal, get rid of that animal, and cut back. And like I said, there's no shame in that. We have done that so many times where, this animal just is going to be so great. It's going to bring this to the homestead. It's going to be just fantastic. And we dive in, and after a while, it's just not working. Maybe it's too much work. And we decide we're just gonna be done. We're gonna get rid of that animal. That doesn't mean that in the future, if life circumstances change, you can't revisit that animal. But if it's too much right now, be done and just reflect on it and think about it, and maybe in the future. So that's number 2. Do not think that you have to keep all the animals that you buy. Don't be afraid to downsize. Number 3, do not be afraid to ask for help. There are so many wonderful people who have maybe been doing homesteading or raising animals for years and years and years and are a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, there's people on YouTube, but there are real life people that you can meet. Maybe if you're going to someone's house to buy a certain animal, ask them some questions while you're there. Most people who live this life and raise animals, grow food, and do these things, they're usually pretty down-to-earth people, and most of them really love what they do, or else they wouldn't do it because it's a lot of work. So don't be afraid to ask people, because most people love to talk about these things and actually really enjoy mentoring people. So do not be afraid to ask for help or seek out help. If you can't find somebody to ask questions to, go to Facebook. There's lots of groups for everything. There's a group for like every specific type of animal, and there's lots of people on those groups that have a lot of experience and can help answer your specific questions. So how not to start a homestead, number 3 is do not hesitate to ask for help and think that you have to do it by yourself. Number 4, how not to start a homestead, is do not build too hastily. So if you're just buying a property, don't go around and start throwing up buildings and fences and all these things. It's really exciting to develop your property, but you really need to observe it for a while and kind of settle into it a little bit. And this most certainly is, it's most certainly a good idea to go through a wet season when you get the most rain, when the ground's really saturated, because only during this time can you really see where the water wants to go, where the water wants to gather. You don't want to be building on those areas. And I'll tell you a story from our homestead in North Carolina. We had a large pasture, and we wanted to build a little goat shed out there for some of my dairy goats. So we built this nice little goat shed, but then the rainy season came and it started raining a lot. And when that happened, a lovely little river would go through our pasture, and it went right through the middle of that goat shed. So that ended up being a nightmare scenario. It was horrible, and it could have been avoided if we just waited a little while and then moved the shed and built it over here or over here instead of right where the river wanted to go. So observe your property, observe the waterways and what happens when it rains, and also just walk around your property and try to envision where you want things to go. What do you need to be close to the house? What doesn't need to be as close? And you don't have to go and be there every day. That could be a little further. So take some time to plan. It will save you a lot in the future, because building isn't cheap. It takes time, and you don't want to have to redo things if you can avoid it. So my next one is, do not expect fast results. There is not much in the homesteading world that gives you a fast result or that instant gratification. Everything takes time. It takes time for animals to have babies. It takes time for everything. Everything takes time. And you're just not going to see those results as fast as you want to. It's just how it is. So you have to learn patience and don't get discouraged. What we do as we look around and we see all the unfinished projects, and we maybe are tempted to get a little, downhearted about it, we look back and say, wow, look how far we've come. Look what it used to be like. And look at that progress, rejoice in that progress, and it'll kind of fuel you to keep going. But homesteading is just that. It takes time, and especially do not think that you're going to just start making money with your animals and with your things that quickly. It takes time to grow. So do not expect fast results. And my last thing that I wanted to share of how not to start a homestead is, do not compare what you're doing and your life with anybody else, because everybody's situation is different. And I especially say that, do not compare what you're doing with anybody on the other side of the camera whether that is pictures on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, because you're not seeing the whole picture. And even though people who put information out there like us, we want to be realistic and we want to be encouraging, it's just hard to convey all of the good and all of the bad to someone else. You can't see all the things that happen from day to day to day. So just because someone looks nice and shiny and pretty in their pictures and what they're doing, and they look really productive, and maybe they are really productive, but I guarantee you every single person has struggles and has messes and has unfinished business and projects that they're working on. So don't feel like you're a failure because someone else looks prettier or is maybe a few steps ahead of you, because again, everybody grows at a different pace. You just cannot compare yourself side by side, and that will just do nothing but discourage you. So those are my 6 how not to start a homestead tips. If you yourself are a seasoned homesteader or farmer and happen to be watching this video, and I'm sure I missed a bunch of good tips that are out there, that if there's any that you want to share, please comment below. If you are maybe watching this video because you are seriously considering starting a homestead and you have any questions, I mean what I said, ask people, ask us, and I can answer any questions, or I'll try to, that you put in the comments. And I just hope that if you really are trying to seek out that homesteading journey, I wish you all the best on that. And I will see you next time here at Honey Acres Homestead.